Bhagavad Gita retreat, December 22nd to 25th, in a 7,500 acre property in the Rio Grande Valley, which is that part of Texas which is in the southeast and shares a border with Mexico. It'll be from Friday the 25th until noon, Friday the 22nd till noon on Monday the 25th. I'll be there, and from what I heard, Harsh also, our devotee, our graduate student, University of Utah, stays in the Salt Lake City Temple. We'll be there as well. I've gotten the notification that we'll be roommates in the hotel. And I believe there are no fees for the festival itself. I believe all you have to do is pay the airfare to McAllen, Texas. And they are already arranged discounted motel rates. So from what I understand, the festival fees are nil, which probably means, don't quote me on this, probably means the prasadam is complimentary as well. I'll be giving a class or two there. Prad from Australia will be on hand, as well as Nityananda, former president of Dallas. Radhika Raman, my hero, will be there. I'm going just to get his association, in fact. And Guru Prasad Swami, I think, Guru Prasad Swami. This is a huge project which is blessed by Jayapataka Maharaj and as well as Radhanath Swami, who both visited the property and given their blessings. So if you want to have a true Gita Jayanti, if you want to truly remember Krishna on Christmas, here is the opportunity, the new Navadvip Bhagavad Gita retreat over Christmas weekend, December 22nd, 25th. Just look up New Navadvip, Navadvip, and you can get the registration page is right on their front page. Okay, we're talking about Gajendra, obviously. The point that we ended on yesterday was that Gajendra had forgotten. He hadn't forgotten in his last life, right up until the time of death, he was Krishna conscious. Krishna used Agastya Muni to perpetrate an unfair situation. Indradumna, who was Krishna conscious, who was remembering Krishna's previous life, was unfairly, unjustly cursed by Agastya to take birth as an elephant. When he went into his next body, then he forgot Krishna. Then he forgot Krishna, became absorbed, attached. There's no indication up until the time when the crocodile latched onto Gajendra's leg in the water. There's no indication by Sukadeva Goswami that there was any recollection of Krishna in the life of Gajendra up to that point in time. Totally involved in dominating the herd, being a good spouse to his many elephant wives, being a good father to the elephant children, providing for them, going out of his way to make their life comfortable and easy. There's not the slightest indication that Gajendra remembered Krishna. And why do I make that point? That it's very obvious that Gajendra did not remember anything about his previous life. Why do I make that point? Can you guess? There in the comment section of Facebook. Because even if we don't remember Krishna, Krishna never forgets us. Even if we don't remember Krishna, Krishna never forgets us. Gajendra had completely forgot about the Krishna consciousness of his past life. There are many instances where devotees, they leave their body, they enter into the womb of another mother, and immediately Krishna consciousness is there waiting for them. They don't miss a beat. They hit the womb running. You've heard the term hit the ground running. There are devotees like Prahlad and others who literally hit the womb running. There's no interruption in their Krishna consciousness. But according to the Lord can do anything. You know, he's inscrutable. He's indecipherable. The Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Plants his footstep on the sea, his wonders to perform. Deep and unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, he treasures up his bright designs and works his never-failing will. You fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds you so much dread are full with mercy and will break in blessings on your head. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan his work in vain. God is his own interpreter, and he will make it plain. Another one, my life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colors, but he worketh steadily. He often chooses sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper and I the underside. Not till the loom fall silent and the shuttle ceases to fly will Krishna unroll the canvas and reveal the reasons why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as are the threads of gold and silver in the pattern that he has planned. Can I do one more? Can I make it a trifecta on the inscrutability of the Lord? Okay, here we go. Krishna's ways may twist and turn, my heart may throb and ache, but my soul has no concern because he makes no mistake. My sacred plans may go astray, my hopes may fade away, but I'll still trust in him to lead because he knows the way. Though the night be dark and the light take forever to break, I'm going to go along with him because he makes no mistake. There's so much I cannot see, my eyesight farted him. Who am I to disagree? I'm going to go along with him. And by the mist will lift and the foggy night will fade and the rising sun will make it plain. Krishna or God made not a single mistake. So it would seem almost that Krishna had forgotten Gajendra, just as Gajendra had forgotten Krishna. In the normal course of affairs, if someone forgets you, your tendency is, oh, heck with them. They don't remember anything. They don't know my name. I did them that favor 5-6 years ago. And they don't remember my name. They just took what I did for them for granted. Heck with them. I'll put them out of my mind. How many times have we told ourselves, I'll put them out of our mind? Oh, even though Gajendra forgot Krishna, and probably that potentially was more painful for Krishna than a neophyte forgetting. Gajendra was indudumina. He was like 90-some% Krishna conscious. And yet he forgot Krishna. How can that happen? How can that happen? Well, that happenstance could have potentially been more painful for Krishna than a neophyte just beginning the journey, forgetting Krishna. That's to be expected, that a neophyte would have bouts of forgetfulness of Krishna. But here's someone who was almost completely locked up into Krishna consciousness, and he forgets him. So potentially very hurtful for the Lord. But the Lord does not hold that against Indradumna. In fact, it's the background story is that that's the arrangement of the Lord. Krishna is Sarvasya Chahamridi Shano Madash Mitir Gyanam Apoadam Cha. He's in the hearts of all living beings. And if it suits his purposes, he will revive the consciousness of a previous life. Dying is traumatic. Entering a womb is traumatic. Being packed up within the womb for 9 months is traumatic. Being pushed out with blood and placenta is traumatic. Gasping for air, taking your first breaths, inflating your lungs is traumatic. Everything about death and rebirth is completely traumatic. So it's no wonder that when we undergo this traumatic transition from one body to another, we forget God. It's not any wonder. But in most cases, Krishna revives the consciousness of one's former life ASAP. He doesn't want us to be in forgetfulness of him. And when it's beyond our capabilities of reaching out and recollecting him, he leans down, he reaches down, and he revives the consciousness of our previous life. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, has had elsewhere its setting and cometh from afar. Not entire forgetfulness, nor in utter nakedness we come, but trailing clouds of glory from God as our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy. He beholds the light, and whence it come, he sees it in his joy. And this youth who daily further from the east must travel, still is nature's priest, and by this vision splendid is on his way attended. At length the man perceives it fade away and die in the light of common day. What does this poem by Wordsworth tell us? That when we take birth in another body and we're pushed out into the light of day, We still have recollections, fleeting, ephemeral, wispy remembrance of our previous lives. Otherwise, babies that haven't even opened their eyes yet, they're visualizing something. Their eyes are going back and forth behind the closed eyebrows. Their brains are active. And that means that they still have some recollections of the body they just left, of the previous life they just lived. However, those recollections fade away. The more that people fawn over them, the more that a man presents himself as daddy and a mother presents herself as mommy, the more that he gets the breast milk from the mom, the more the relatives chuck him under the cheek and dote over him. The further back is the recollection of his previous life pushed. At length, a man perceives it fade away and die in the light of common day. This is the story of most souls who take birth after birth in this material world. It's a process of perhaps initially having some residual memories of one's previous life, whether it had been in devotional service or whether it had been without devotional service. But then as one becomes more and more involved in one's present body and the extension of that body, that wisp of recollection goes away, except in the case of devotees, when for the most part, Suchanam Srimitam Gehe Yoga Brashta Bijayate, Krishna, at the point in time when the boy would normally be absorbed in the new family, the new relatives, the new father, the new mother, the new older brother, the new older sister, by Krishna's grace, he has taken birth by the arrangement of the Lord. He comes out in a devotee family or a Brahmin family or an aristocratic family, which in traditional India meant a devotee family. And so at that point in time, when the memories of his previous life would have begun to fade, the specific memories, nevertheless, the environment of the previous life, he may not specifically remember the details of his previous life, but he finds himself in a similar environment where there's Tulsi worship, where there are deities, where there's kirtan, where there's prasadam, where there are gentle, kind, considerate, sensitive, non-envious, supportive, loving parents and relatives. And so the soul is caught, so to speak. Maybe he would drop at the point in time of which his memories of specific memories of a previous life are fading. He would have dropped, he would have fallen to Maya, but Krishna catches him. You might imagine like catching a fly ball and surrounds him with devotees, so that then without hardly missing a beat, he may not remember the specific activities of a previous life, but in terms of an interruption of his devotional service, there is none. For practical, there is none. And look at Parikshit, was born in the Pandava dynasty. It was seeing his uncles and his father and his relatives perform the arti. He actually never saw his father, but he saw his uncles and his grandfathers performing arti, doing devotional service, doing kirtan. His playthings were all Krishna conscious playthings having to do with Krishna and Ram. His food was prasadam from the very beginning of his birth. So whatever he was in his past birth, Krishna gave him the conducive circumstances in his birth as Parikshit to continue in his Krishna consciousness. Look at Prabhupada. Prabhupada was born. His father, Gaur Mohan De, was a devotee. And so that when Prabhupada was a child, his father taught him, arranged that he'd learn how to play the mridanga, arranged that he'd learn how to play the harmonium, sing bhajans, how to have his own little deities, how to do his own arti, how to offer his own prasadam. He even organized his own little Rath Yatra for the kids in the neighborhood there in Calcutta. And his father helped him, bought him all the ingredients for cooking, how to build a Rath cart. This is what Krishna does for one's devotee. Even a little advancement on the path stands one in great stead, because that will be revived in one's next life in general. But we hedged all of this by saying that the Lord is inscrutable. You can never predict what the Lord's going to do. So in Gajendra's case, although he was 90-some% Krishna conscious from his previous life, by the arrangement of the Lord made him an exception. What the Lord normally does, he didn't do for Gajendra. Gajendra did not land. It appears that he didn't catch Gajendra. It appears that Gajendra fell all the way from here, all the way down into the subhuman species of life. And it appears that the Lord didn't catch him. Why didn't the Lord catch him? So that he could use Gajendra for his purposes. Gajendra is going to teach us that sooner or later, the Lord will catch you. Sooner or later, the Lord will pick you up. You may forget. How many of us forget, even in this body? Be honest. How much of your day, today, yesterday, how much of your day was spent in absorption of Krishna? Be honest. Probably not a whole lot. Maybe 5%, 4%, 10%, 20%, 30%. And 70% of the day, we were in complete forgetfulness of Krishna. We forget Krishna even in this body. What to speak of remembering Krishna on the other side of death, of packed in the womb, of rebirth, and all the different distractive elements which defray from whatever Krishna consciousness that you've cultivated in this life. But the lesson of Gajendra is that the Lord never forgets. The Lord never forgets. God is defined as Aishwarya Shamagasha Viryasyayas Jnana Viragashanam Bhagami Tingana, who is full with 6 opulences of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. As well as being the most strong, the most beautiful, the most intelligent, God is the most renounced. He's the most humble. Even though he has more reasons than any other living being to be puffed up because of his beauty, because of his wisdom, because of his wealth, because of his fame, he manages in all of that to maintain perfect humility. You all know the fact that when the kings from all over the world at the time of Krishna's appearance arrived as guests for the Rajasuya sacrifice, Nakula volunteered to take care of the horses, and as the kings arrived with their chariots and mounted on their horses, Nakula was there to take the horses off, to take their saddles off, to brush them, to feed them, to take good care of the horses. Nakula was there to give them gifts of cows. All the visitors who attended the Rajasuya sacrifice were going to go back with herds of cows. Nakula was responsible for that. And Bhima took charge of cooking, providing sumptuous prasadam for all the guests and all the visitors. Draupadi took charge of giving gifts and managing the treasury. The kings would offer tribute to Yudhishthira, acknowledging him as the seat of the world government. And Yudhishthira, on his part, would give gifts back to those who had bowed their heads before him. Draupadi was in charge of all that balance sheet, all that reconciliation of incoming and expenditures and so on and so forth. Krishna volunteered to wash the feet of the incoming guests. Krishna volunteered to wash the feet of the incoming guests. What would be, if someone asked us, would you like to wash the feet of various men who have traveled on dusty roads without showering for several days to get here? What would be your reaction? Oh man, can I do something else? You know, those feet would stink. They would be full of toe jam. Oh, they would be dirty and dusty, and some of them would be gnarled, some of them have bunions, and some of them have corns, and is there anything else I can do? Couldn't I make flower garlands instead? Krishna did not shirk from washing the feet. And some of those were very envious of Krishna. Jarasandha would have come, and some of the really demoniac soldiers, Duryodhana would have been there, Sakuni, Karna, and Krishna didn't make any exception. In his humility, Atiti Deva Bhava, anyone who comes as a guest, you have to offer them not hold back in terms of your hospitality. Any enemy who comes to visit you as a guest in your house should never perceive that you have any issues with them. At least while they're sheltered under your roof as the host, the guests should feel like your brothers, your best friends. The hospitality should be of such a standard. Krishna volunteered to wash the feet of all the incoming guests because of his humility. And because of his humility, he never forgets the slightest service that we do him. No matter how insignificant the service might have been, no matter how long ago it had been performed, Krishna never forgets. You can imagine elephants live long lives. Even here on earth, elephants live for 120, 130, 140 years. The time of their gestation, I believe, is 2 years. They spend 2 years in the womb. And don't forget, this is on the heavenly planets. The Trikuta mountain where all these pastimes took place is on the heavenly planets. And the heavenly planets, our 6 months is their 1 day. So and Gajendra has not only reached maturity in the heavenly planets, in the elephant's body, but he's also dominated all the other male elephants. That would have taken some time. He's got wives. He would have had to court them and married them. That would have taken some time. He's made them pregnant. The period of gestation on Earth is 2 years. We don't know how long the soul lives within the elephant's body on the heavenly planets. Could be longer, could be shorter, but that takes time. So a considerable amount of time, perhaps thousands of years, have passed since Gajendra left his previous body as Imdadumna. And there's no indication in any of that passage of time that Gajendra remembered Krishna at all. There isn't a word, a syllable, a letter in the Bhagavatam up to the 8th canto where Sukadeva Goswami indicates that Gajendra had the slightest recollection of his previous life or of devotional service. And in spite of the passage of time, in spite of the trauma of going from an exalted king in the human form to taking birth in the subhuman species of life, in spite of the contention, the fights that must have taken place to establish himself as the king of the elephants, in spite of all the attention that he had to spend for his wife and his kids, and all of that, and all of that forgetfulness, and all that absorption in the affairs of this temporary material world, and in all the passage of time, Krishna never forgot the service of Gajendra from a previous life. Never forgot. Just like Prahlad, we refer to Prahlad in so many instances. We're like ping-ponging between Gajendra and Prahlad. Prahlad, Mahamnita Magnasita Soche Tato Vimuktine Nevovija Paradaratyavaitaram Tadbiri Gaira Mahamnita Signa. So Prahlad says, with having Krishna, having obtained Krishna, I have no other desires. When I have Krishna, I have everything. Now, on the other hand, his father, Hiranyakashipu, had everything, but he was restless, he was agitated, he was angry, he was miserable all the time because he was not ready to give himself to Krishna. He came to Krishna. By Krishna's mercy, he came to Krishna. He ended up on Krishna's lap, totally at the mercy of Krishna, but that was by force. We're not recommended to come to Krishna's lap following the footsteps of Hiranyakashipu through envy and contention. We're recommended to come to Krishna's lap like Prahlad came, being swept up by the Lord out of love and affection. Just like a father takes his obedient, loving child and puts him on his knee, and they have murmured a beautiful, intimate conversation as friends. So Prahlad ended up on Nrsingadev's knee, lap. Hiranyakashipu ended up on the half man, half lion incarnation's lap. But the path of Prahlad is the one that we're enjoined to follow, not the path of Hiranyakashipu. Drishta maya divivabu kiridasham ayoshryav divicharam yeshmat kata hasha vishumbara vishportanam lutitshitare nashtam. It is said that Hiranyakashipu had performed austerities, he had schemed, He had plotted, he had planned, he had foamed at the mouth, he had exerted himself mightily, he had gathered followers, he had fought battles, he had the scars to prove it, he had defeated formidable enemies like Indra, Varuna, Vayu, Chandra. He occupied the throne of the king of heavens, Indra. He had access to the Apsaras, the dancing girls of the heavenly planets, to the Nandana gardens, and yet he was always agitated, always restless, always angry, always miserable. Why? Because he was not ready to give himself to Krishna. Though you may have dominion over vast amounts of Krishna's external energy, it's not going to give you the same satisfaction as going to the source, watering the root of the tree. When you have Krishna, you have everything. When you have everything but not Krishna, you have nothing. Saitam nirjirakuku kara vishana yatobajacham bujate nachutamti ajitendriya. Saitam nirjirakuku. Prahlad lived for Krishna. Hiranyakashipu lived for exploiting the external material energy of Krishna. Hiranyakashipu lived for sense gratification. Saita nijabiru karat vishampatu. Visha is the word for sense gratification. Priya. Hiranyakashipu was very fond of the stimulation of the senses through the tongue, the eyes, the nose, the genitals, the sense of touch. He was an addict. He was an addict. And although he had unlimited facility to stimulate all of the senses of his body, he was waited on hand and foot by beautiful girls, by people who brought him intoxicating beverages, by people who sang his glories. Even the demigods trembled in fear when he would raise a single eyebrow in displeasure. Though he had full access to all of the external energies of the Lord, he was always agitated, always miserable, always angry. And Prahlad was a 5-year-old boy. He hadn't conquered, he hadn't raised an army, he hadn't schemed, he hadn't plotted, he hadn't done any of that. All he did was chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he declared himself completely satisfied. He declared that whenever he would chant the name of Krishna, he would merge in an ocean of transcendental bliss. Prahlad was tortured by his father. Draupadi was caught in the middle of the assembly and tried to make naked. Dhruva Maharaj was prevented from getting up on the lap of his father. Maharaj Parikshit was attempted to be killed within the womb of his mother. And later on, he was unfairly cursed by the Brahmin boy to die within 7 days. What do all these God-centered personalities have in common? That when they got caught in a web of betrayal, caught in a web of deceit, caught in a web of lust, they all looked up to Krishna. Hiranyakashipu, when he met a difficult situation, he'd take something, he'd drink something, he'd smoke something, he'd spew some invective, some anger, he'd order some minion to do something, he'd blame somebody. He looked down and he looked around whenever there was a challenge, whenever there's friction. And his life was a life of constant anxiety, constant stress. He's the poster boy for hypertension. He's the poster boy for high blood pressure, because from the ground and from the horizon, there isn't anyone who can help you when you get into trouble. Every other living being within your vision, within your horizontal broad vision on the horizontal plane or on the downward plane, every living being, or even upwards up to a certain point, the demigods themselves are under the shadow of the cloud called death. There's an example we see often in recreational places. People climb up in rocks and jump into a pool. Well, you have to make sure that pool's shallow, deep enough so that you don't jump in. If there's rocks like 18 inches below the surface, you'll kill yourself. So presumably when you see people jumping in a pool, it's established that the pool is deep enough. And enough people have done it over a prolonged period of time that even though you can't see what's below the water, you feel fairly confident jumping, because the person just before you and the person before them and the person before them and the person before them, they all jumped and they didn't get killed. So you jump. So the difference between jumping into the hands of Krishna, the difference between looking up to Krishna or looking around or looking down or looking up to the demigods, is that the demigods are compared to shallow water. You jump from a great height, and just beneath the surface of the water, there are rocks. It's a formula for disaster. You have to make sure there's enough depth of water that you'll not have your legs and arms broken. But Krishna is compared to that pool which is deep, the pool jumping into which, leaning against, depending upon, there's enough depth, there's enough there, there's a vastness there, there's a limitlessness there that you will be safe. Not only in terms of Krishna's resources, in terms of the fact that he's within every atom, the fact that his memory extends from the alpha to the omega, that he never forgets, not only because of the fact of his humility, that he exalts and magnifies even the slightest service that you've done, neither does he ever forget it. You can jump into Krishna's hands with full confidence that he can protect you, even from death. He himself is free from death. He is avyayam, abhutanam, ishwaram. He is deathless. When he comes to this material world, he does so in his original spiritual form, which is full of knowledge, bliss, and eternity. On the other hand, if you take shelter of any demigods or any celebrity or any politician or any military person or any other person, save and except for Krishna, it's like jumping from a great height into a shallow pool of water. You're going to get crushed against the rocks. So what do we learn from Gajendra's having forgotten Krishna for perhaps 1,000 years by our calculations, 2,000 years, 10,000 years? We learn that whenever we do any even small amount of service to Krishna, what to speak of all the service that Gajendra did in his previous life as Gajendra, Krishna never forgets. We may forget the service that we did in a past life. We may forget the service that we did in this life. We may forget the service we did yesterday or the day before. Our position in Krishna consciousness is fragile because our minds are fragile and because we're always changing bodies. In the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, Bahune me vyati janmani tari tani ambeda netam beda sarantapa. Krishna tells Arjuna that both you and I have taken many births. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. So why is it that Arjuna cannot remember his previous births? Because he's changing bodies. And with the change of body comes forgetfulness. The body I had yesterday is not exactly the same body I had today. The body I have tomorrow is going to be different. So the change of body brings about forgetfulness. Gajendra has gone from a human being to an elephant, and as an elephant, he's gone from an elephant in the womb to a baby elephant, to a juvenile elephant, to a youngster elephant, to a mature elephant, to a husband elephant, to a father elephant, to a king elephant. And all throughout all these various changes of body, Gajendra is a long way from remembering the Lord. He's many bodies down the road, many bodies apart from the Lord. You're not this body you're living in, your eternal spirit soul, so where should I begin? Every living entity, including you, is immortal. It's the inner self, which is true, the outer body, misty like morning dew, musty and crusty after youth passes, earth to earth, dust to dust, ash to ashes. Every 7 years, each cell is replaced. The old body is erased, displaced, effaced. Every cell is changing. You're always reincarnating. The question remains, who are you and what are you going to do about transmigration? You can ignore the concept and hit the exit by the nearest route, or you can stay and listen to our lyrics and get a vision of the truth. Most people are not open. They do not want to know. The question I propose from me to you is, do you have the eyes to see? The soul is unborn and never grows old. You can tell by the way you cry, can try to conform to a limited life. Death is so painful because we're not supposed to die. The soul is eternal. We know it inside. Like, why should I change my body again? That question didn't arise in the mind of Gajendra over such a long, prolonged, extended period of time. But it never left the mind of Krishna. Krishna was biding his time. The mills of God grind slowly, let they grind exceeding small, though with patience he stands waiting, with exactness grinds he all. In India, the grains are processed. The grains are made into flour by putting them in this well, and it has rocks it's like a well, but it's not for water. It's just a place to contain the grains. And then there's a paddle in the well, and then the paddle has arms that connect to the chests of oxen. And oxen walk around and around and around and around. And as a result of this, the grains gradually get crushed and ground into powder, into flour. That's how it's done. But it's a long, slow process. The oxen don't run, they don't gallop, they don't canter. They walk at a very slow, leisurely, relaxed pace, and takes a long time. It may take the better part of a day to reduce a container full of grains to flour. So if you're expecting it to happen in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, and you're there and you're waiting with your cup, you want to make some cookies and you need 4 cups of flour, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be like, oh, what? Nothing seems to be happening. I'm wasting my time. What's going on here? You've got the grains, you've got these big, strong ox, but nothing's happening. It's a waste of time. You have to go away, come back in the evening, and then those grains will be totally pulverized. But it takes some time. So it says the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceeding small, though with patience he stands waiting, exactness grinds he all. 1,000,000 years are but a finger snap for the Lord, a blink of an eye. He doesn't experience time in the same way we do. We're sitting, getting bored out of our minds, tapping our fingers. Our foot is going like out of impatience, out of frustration. Why isn't it happening on my time frame? Why isn't it happening according to my schedule? But the Lord is totally different relationship with time. 1,000,000 years are nothing for him. He holds past, present, and future in his hand. He can see at one and the same time past. He can see present. He can see future. He doesn't have to wait. He's not within the 3 phases of time. He's not conditioned by the 3 phases of time. He's outside of the 3 phases of time, looking at them as you would look at a fruit in the palm of your hand. So it doesn't matter to the Lord that Gajendra had forgotten him for 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 years by our calculation. That is not of the least importance from the perspective of the Lord. It's only ourselves trying to understand the Lord from our little tiny lens that gives rise to incomprehension, confusion, and frustration. The Lord has never forgotten the service of Gajendra, in the same way that he never forgets even the slightest service that you perform. We are prone to forgetfulness because of the change of the body. The Lord doesn't change his body. Over and above that, he's the most humble person. He does not take anything that we do on his behalf for granted. And consider this, he benefits not at all. He benefits not in the least from any food that we offer to him, from any time slot where we chant his holy names. He doesn't benefit from the temples that we build, from the festivals that we organize. He doesn't become more because we parade him through the streets as Jagannath on Rath Yatra. He doesn't become less if we don't do the Rath Yatra, if we don't build the temple, if we don't offer the prasadam, if we don't worship a deity. There's nothing we can do to make the Lord more, or there's nothing we can fail to do to make the Lord less. He benefits not at all from our service, but rather he makes himself available in the form of memory. He resides as our best friend and companion, as the supersoul in the heart of a living being. And he may cause forgetfulness for some temporary period of time, according to the purposes that he has in mind. But when it's our season, when our time comes, when it's time to get on that launching pad, that Cape Canaveral, back to home, back to Godhead, take the fast track, what has seemed to be lacking, what has seemed to be dragging, what the Lord seems to have forgotten, when it's your time, when your past devotional service is activated by the grace of the Lord, then you're going to explode onto the scene. Didn't matter. All the time that Gajendra had wallowed in forgetfulness, his life was not lost. His life was not wasted. He didn't miss his chance. The Lord didn't disown him. The Lord didn't cut him off. The Lord always remained connected with him through the super soul within the heart. And we read about Gajendra thousands of years later in Spanish Fork, Utah, because of the grace and the mercy of the Lord. The fact is that although we don't add anything to the Lord by serving him, nor do we subtract anything, though the fact is that the Lord does what he does, accompanies within the heart, remembers even the slightest of our service that we've done in the past, magnifies that service, makes a big deal out of it, out of his unlimited humility. In all of that, the Lord acts only for our benefit. Keeping in mind that the Lord is the Lord of love. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the Lord of Brahma and Shiva and all the demigods, plays on his flute in the middle of the night in the full moon season, beckoning, calling his devotees to come to him out of their elephant's body, out of their king's body, out of their woman's body, out of their Palestinian body, out of their Israeli body, out of their Ukrainian body, out of their Russian body, out of their Indian body, out of their British body, out of their Muslim body, out of their Pakistani body, out of their Saudi Arabia body. The Lord is calling the pure, pristine, original spirit soul, which ultimately has nothing to do with this material body, nor with the karmic reactions which have caused us to be imprisoned within this body in the first place. The Lord is calling us back to home, back to Godhead. Why? Why does he take all that trouble? Why does he come all this way? Why does he remember reaching far back into the recesses of the past? Because he loves you. He loves you. He made you with his own hands. He created you unique, individual. There's none other like you. You're not a carbon copy. You are a special individual who God knows you intimately since the beginning of time, and you're not with the program. You're not taking advantage of his paternal love. You're missing out on the opportunity to go back to Godhead and enter again into Lila, to play with Krishna and the Gopas and the Gopis on the banks of the river Yamuna in the transcendental Goloka Vrindavan. He wants that for you. He wants it for him as well because he misses you. There's no one who can substitute. There's no one he can switch out. Oh, so-and-so's not here. So-and-so's in the material world. So let me just pick one of my eternally liberated associates in the spiritual world to fill in for him. No one can fill in for you. There's no substitute for you because you are you and there's no other you. There's only one you. And Krishna wants you back more than you want to go yourself. So why not give up all the struggling, all the efforts to be happy by accumulating the temporary, limited resources of this material world? Why not go along with the suggestion of the Lord? Sarva dharmam padicya mame kamsana hamtam sarva vimokshasam. Give up all varieties of religions, give up all protection. Don't look down, don't look abroad, don't look to the demigods, look to the only one who is himself deathless, who has no agenda, who has nothing to gain, who knows you since the beginning of time, who remembers all of your past devotional service. And if you simply chant his holy name, if you simply open the door and let him in, he will equip you, he will guide you, he will enlighten, illuminate your path back to his lotus feet, back to home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhai Bobby is there in the chat. She says, there is no time in the spiritual world. Exactly. Time is not perceived in terms of past, present, and future in the spiritual world. Chad will write. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for jumping in, Chad. Bhai Bobby says, is there an origin of the pull rock comparisons in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Brent, some poetry. Gajendra forgot, but Krishna did not. He brought the elephant's thought to him on the spot, based on consciousness from previous devotion, to save him from the material ocean. Brent's getting pretty good at this now. Gajendra forgot, but Krishna did not. He brought the elephant's thought to him on the spot, based on consciousness from previous devotion, to save him from the material ocean. Very, very good. I'm going to put some of these comments on our YouTube channel. When you post a YouTube video, you can put comments or a teaser text there. I think I might take some of these phrases from Rob, from Carmen, from Natasha, from Brent, and put them in the YouTube. I'm aching to use them for something more than just a sidebar on the Facebook. And so that occurred to me yesterday that I could do that. Bye, Bobby and Brent. Hare Krishna. So bye, Bobby, Chad, Brent, Divya Joshi are our joinees on Facebook and on Zoom. Rob, can you share with us some of your verse today?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
All right. When they hit the womb running, a pure soul's devotion is stunning. Immediate elevation to important station, they combat Maya's cunning.
Good job.
Even a little advancement is a permanent enhancement.
Yes, yes.
It is Krishna's will to serve, though we may not deserve, and by the loving grace of his lotus face, our devotion he preserves.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Demigod's shelter is a shallow pool, bringing disaster upon a fool, but Krishna's pool is wide and deep, his loving shelter ever sweet.
Nice way of putting the story. Again, that's found in the 5th canto, one of Prabhupada's purports in the 5th canto.
I was working on another one, but I didn't get it finished, so I'll have to work on that after.
Okay, you can feel free to send it to me anytime during the day.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Please send the other ones right away, because I'm going to post as soon as we wind up here. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us today on Wisdom Wednesday on Facebook. That's it for this week. We'll be we'll be on Saturday and Sunday in Salt Lake City. I'm giving the talk this weekend, and then we'll see you again with more Gajendra Katha next Motivational Monday. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.